going on here?
Yeah, it's recording now.
It is? Okay.
All right. So welcome everybody. I hope your summer's going well. Final stretch of the year. Let's do recommendations. So thanks everybody for diligently submitting materials, thoughts, right? And the purpose of today. So I want to frame today's conversation. I think it's really important that we do so. So we've been discussing throughout the year some potential recommendation areas. It's a combination of things, some ideas are carryovers from last year, right? And in that bag, we have like methane and maybe nitrous oxide, which was there, right? And we'll talk about those. Then there were some other ideas that we kind of explored throughout the year, including revisiting a study that was done, 17 years ago, with the aid of some additional pieces of documents and reports that have come up throughout the years. And then we have some probably more recent arrivals to those recommendations, including, the past few days. So what I wanted to achieve today, we're not going to be looking specifically at text of recommendations, but more decide on three, kind of what are our three recommendations going to be for this year. I have some ideas as to how to guide the conversation there. And we'll do so by combining all these sources that we have been doing. The one thing that I wanted to cautious all of us, just so we avoid issues down the line, is to not submit recommendations advocating for work that would come to the institutions that we represent, or ourselves as researchers and scientists. I mean, those are no-go zones because those are clear conflicts of interest, right? So it is okay to say, the commission should consider doing this study. It's not okay to say the commission should do this study recruiting University XX or researcher XX, even if it's not us. That's not our job, right? Our job is to advocate for the science and the technology, and it needs to be carried out, not for who does it. And are those rules of engagement more or less reasonable? Yes, I'm seeing nods. I'm not seeing tomatoes.
I have a question, Fernando, on that.
Yes.
I understand, sort of lobbying, this is different than sort of saying, it's almost like we code the science from literature and we say, and so has done this. What is wrong in saying that so-and-so's lab is expert, let's say, in nitrous oxide and so forth?
Yeah, and it's okay. I mean, it is okay to say, so-and-so has done a study similar to this, or that's okay. But what I want to stop short of doing is saying, let's do, Hopkins should do the study, because it's overstretching, right? The commission, MDE, the state can decide to do that down the line, but what we need to specify what needs to be contained. That's a little bit of what I wanted to avoid, just so because later in the year I have to sit down in the commission itself, and this I don't want this to come up at that point. So with that said, let's start. So let me try to organize the conversation this way. We'll go through all these ideas that have been generated. Let's start with the ones that we have been carrying out through the years, which were in that slide deck. And maybe, I don't know, Rahat, can I ask you to share the slide deck first? And because there were three ideas for recommendations there. And then we'll take on the other ones. Conversation's open, and of course, yeah, why don't we go, let's go to the third slide, because the slides 3, 4, and 5 are the ones that have the recommendations. So So this one was one of those examples. This was a carry over from last year, right? And essentially, I was looking back through emails and how this recommendation came about, and it looks like we pulled this out of we did not include this in the 2024 report, right? And the commission wanted us to have more communication with the agricultural community. Also, our key expert in this field, Eric Davidson, was on sabbatical and was not able to participate. So we really didn't make a whole lot of headway with nitrous oxide to include it even in this year's report. So my suggestion, again, for conversation here, is that we table this until we have some more time to mature it. But that's my own sense. So I wanted to open the conversation around this one.
I'd be happy to make a quick comment. I agree that nitrous oxide is important. It's a major greenhouse gas. It's a threat to the ozone layer. My understanding is that it's controllable through good agricultural practices. How you apply fertilizer can make a big difference. We have in our midst arguably the world's expert on agriculture and N2O, as you said, Eric Davidson. And we should hear from him as to what specifically we want to recommend. I've done a little bit of work on this, but he's really good. And we're going to want to make specific recommendations for what kind of agricultural practices should be implemented. And I don't feel comfortable doing that by just doing a literature survey. I'd rather have someone who really is, has rolled up his sleeves and got into the manure aspect of this.
Sure.
Literally as well as figuratively. So I'm okay with tabling it until we can get a chat with Eric.
And
Okay.
Fernando, to that end, Eric has agreed to give that talk. It was just more of a matter of scheduling.
Right. Yeah. And he just came back from sabbatical.
Yeah.
He's officially announced his retirement in the year, so he's in this transition zone. But we can definitely reach out to him and try to see if we can get a little bit more info. But if not, that definitely is something we can continue.
He's here now.
Oh, he's here now. Oh, didn't see you. Sorry, Eric. So Eric, you've been summoned to the conversation then.
Right, my ears were
He's
burning.
here.
Sorry, didn't see you.
Yeah, well, thanks. No, I agree. This is a something that we should be paying attention to, and we shouldn't be putting it off too much longer.
Okay.
N2O is having a bit of a moment. We had a global nitrous oxide assessment by the Climate and Clean Air Coalition of UNEP last year, and the CCAC is doing another agro-food assessment this year, and I'm participating in both of those. And so, we could pull together something. I'm not sure about the timeline here in terms of recommendations on management practices that would help reduce nitrous oxide emissions. Where we have significant agriculture, especially on the Eastern Shore, a lot of corn grown for corn and soybeans grown for the poultry industry in particular. And so those are significant emissions, and there are some opportunities there. Not only I, but some others have worked on how drainage water management can help mitigate the N2O emissions. And so there are a number of things that we could discuss. But can you remind me again the time frame?
Yes.
If you're needing a recommendation by this autumn, then I think we need to probably do need to make the recommendations in the following year.
Right. So yeah. So and thanks, Jared, for the kind reminder in the chat. The draft recommendations are due on Labor Day, let's call it the Tuesday, September 2nd, which is 3 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, he's
and
the 4th, yeah.
so, but the format for the recommendation is rather simple. It's it's a few sentences. Um, let me suggest the following. Eric, or unless you can make your mind up right now, if if this is the time frame that you could meet, we could probably pull something together. Jared has pointed out also kindly that the group can submit up to 4 recommendations, so maybe there is room to submit this one if we're ready.
Well, so I've looked at, like, for instance, what Russ has drafted and some others have drafted for some of the other recommendations. And if there are recommendations for doing a study over the course of the next year, then I think that could probably be done.
Okay.
As opposed to waiting until this time
Right.
next year
Okay.
to make a recommendation for doing something in 26, 27, right?
Okay. All right. So why don't we put a pin on this, and so it is a possibility to develop the text of a recommendation over the next few weeks, and if so, we can probably do it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Any other reactions to nitrous oxide?
I think the nature of the recommendation is going to be that, and Eric, please weigh in, examine Maryland's agricultural practices and other substantive sources of nitrous oxide to see where best management practice or other abatement procedures could be effectively implemented with, co-benefits if possible. And I mean, Eric, you're the expert at, drainage tiles, how people apply fertilizer, what they do with the manure. These all matter, right? And to give the Maryland Department of Agriculture and MDE guidelines is a fairly substantial task. Is that also true? Is it something you've already got in your back pocket, or is this, we're going to need to, pay somebody to sit down and work on it for a couple months?
Well, as is noted here, I mean, there is already an inventory. I'd have to do some more research into understanding what that inventory is based upon. There are a limited number of interventions that we can recommend, but we can recommend that we need to explore which of those are most pertinent to the situation across the state of Maryland, and which would be the most effective in attempt to recommend for implementation. But that is something we'd be looking at over the course of the next several months. But your point is well taken. So the recommendation here is, that we recommend initiating an effort to identify which of those interventions would be most fruitful in terms of reducing nitrate, reducing nitrous oxide, and perhaps improving the bottom line for farmers as well.
Yeah, but there's extensive literature, I would say, starting from almost like early 1980s. Wendell Gilliam from NC State, with Wayne Skaggs, my advisor, and I get involved with the drain mod and so forth with respect to water table management. That one of the ideas is that you create anaerobic conditions, so you denitrify nitrate, and during that process, then you have, NOx also emitting, which actually in Sweden, they were thinking that's crazy. So in other words, there is ample amount of really literature, and I was looking in 2020, basically 6% of the total greenhouse gas emissions are through, N2O, basically nitrous oxides. And yes, agriculture is one of the sources, but and that's fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, organic, and all of the above, which we have in Maryland. I think it really requires as David mentioned, I mean, Eric mentioned, excuse me, that's to do an inventory. Already there is an ample amount of literature on BMPs that are at hand. For example, nutrient management in Maryland, that you are reducing fertilizer applications. That's one way, at least you are contributing to not to add too much nitrogen to the soil. My point is we have to be a little bit careful, that to really back it up with the existing science and then suggest that what else is left that we need really to do. But either way, I'll stop there. But yeah, I have done a little bit, through modeling and so forth. But
Okay.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yes, please.
So this is Alicia at the Department of Agriculture. Thanks, Adele. I don't have a hand raising feature for some reason on this, but yeah, I was just going to make the note. So the state greenhouse gas inventory really does rely on federal data, right? That then gets scaled to the state. So both MDA and MDE have partnered to bring more localized data into the inventory. We had started with the sequestration portion, recognizing the potential there, but with a note between the agencies in the future to collaborate more on the emissions inventory, recognizing that federal data does not hold well, in my opinion, for the state of Maryland, where we have such stringent nutrient management regulations. So as we start this conversation, to Adele's point, it's going to be really important to engage with MDA on what we already know to be the stewardship levels of farmers, both regulated and precision nutrient management. And we're happy to collaborate in that space when appropriate.
Good.
Fantastic.
That's great. I would say it's more the rule than the exception that the federal emissions inventories have room for improvement.
Fantastic. All right, good. And I'll reiterate the format of the recommendations that we need to submit. It's fairly streamlined, simplified. So I think, and this was done purposefully to provide efficiency, et cetera. So I think we can probably make it. And so I'm encouraged by this. Let me, Rahat, can we go to the next slide? And so this was one that, and Don Bosch could not make it today due to a conflict, but we talked a little bit about this so this is about updating a major study that was done, many years ago, but complementing this with new information. And I know that Don has been, and I've seen the emails crossing with Amir and Robin, and I get the sense that this could be an important contribution. The comment that I wanted to make, and it relates to the next slide, so maybe Rahat can go to that one, is that I think there's an opportunity to actually merge these two. And the reason I say this is because the second recommendation, updating the study, is about the impacts of climate change in the state of Maryland, but it's more on kind of bringing things up to date. This part of the study, which relates more to the development of future scenarios and looking into the future, those two can provide a very powerful package if they are merged. Okay to consider them independently. Merging has the advantage that it allows us to incorporate more of other recommendations that we have on the table. So I wanted to put that up for discussion.
Fernando, I really want to applaud the idea of merging, because I was involved in the impact, and then we did an adaptation, and we did a mitigation. We did 3 separate reports over a course of a year and a half or so. And I think that's sort of siloed some of the actions. And I think it'd be much better we don't have time to spend just talking about impacts. We want to take that conversation and turn it quickly and immediately into adaptation and mitigation. So I think merging makes a lot of sense. If you're going to spend that much effort, bundle it together.
Yeah, and also having the perspective component, right? It's, Maryland's looking at scenarios for 2050, and so how does that jibe with the assessment that can be done to date? So I think it could be a very, very powerful package, and I think I mean, these are two ideas that we've discussed and we've had presentations in the group, et cetera.
I do want to point out, it took some resources to make this happen.
Yes,
It
yes,
was-
yes, yes.
Not
And
something that we can
Yes.
just kind of do on the side. Because the cast of characters that we got involved in those conversations was much broader than STWG.
yes. And so two comments in the chat. Russ points out that the 2008 report was largely unfunded. Don Bosch has also made that point. And Jennifer is making the point that the governor vetoed a number of climate studies, climate-related studies. So yes, I mean, I think the funding piece would, would need to be factored in. I think our role in terms of being the Science and Technology Working Group is to submit the recommendation that this should be done, right? Who's going to do it? Is it going to be part of the scope of the agency? That's a little bit out of the scope of this group. It needs to be this. I think this could be discussed at the commission level, though. Yes, Rachel?
I just had a quick clarification question. Is the proposal here to update the plan to focus on the specific potential priority policies and actions through 2045? Was that the recommendation here? Because just to note that the Climate Solutions Now Act does require MDE to already do that report.
Right.
So perhaps you're just suggesting there's ways you think that could be done more efficiently, or you're suggesting that specific content be included? Just trying to clarify.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We can flesh out those details in the narrative if we were to proceed with this. I think that I think we'll probably need a better understanding what the scope of what the department intends to carry out would be.
Okay, I know Chris Beck, you're on here too. My memory is just that there's a series of, that law required us to do a series of analytical reports, and I just do know this is required of us. I'm not remembering what year it's due, however, so I need to double check that.
Yeah, and there's some, and I know there's people lined up in the chat. There's also a complementary, I don't want to call it proposal, but a complementary addition to this recommendation, which is the health angle. I have Amir with his hand up, so maybe he can add some details to this.
All right. Thanks, Fernando. Just for everyone's information, the Climate and Health Report back in 2016, that was supported through funds from CDC that came through Maryland Department of Health. We have had several conversations both with MDH and also MDE, even call we had yesterday about the need to update that. So we are acutely aware of it, and there's a lot of momentum behind that, in terms of doing that work. I think, Fernando, your idea of combining all of these sounds very interesting. In fact, I had just had a offline exchange with Don and Russ about possibility of combining exactly the same idea, sort of like the watered down version of National Climate Assessment. Maybe watered down version is not the right terminology. Please ignore that. But like reduced version of NCA focused specifically on Maryland. So it becomes sort of the go-to document for the next decade, so to speak.
Right. Okay. Okay, so we'll move along. So any other comments in terms of the idea of merging these, coordinating with MD, with the department, and considering the health angle to this? Yes, Adele?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that we were talking about nitrous oxides and the carbon, you know, from one of the aspects is the soil management that really affects what kind of nitrous oxide emissions we have in agriculture. And soil management, really carbon is at the core of it. Even for the drainage and water table management scenario, organic matter is basically the food for the bacteria that is responsible for denitrification and production of N2O. So they go hand in hand. In other words, if we are doing management that's sequestering carbon and decreasing the carbon dioxide emissions and so on, greenhouse gases, that's really goes hand in hand if management is right to reduce also noxic, you know, basically nitrous oxide emissions and so forth. So it is good to really, if we are going to have a backup sort of explanation for these, to really look at the biochemical processes that how they are connected when we are looking into the soil and residue and organic matter within the agriculture at least system, and water, all of those that stats some moisture that affects the biochemical processes.
Thank you, Adele. And thank you for those that are putting comments on the chat. Yes, you know, procuring foundation money to do studies like this is, can be part of this effort. So yeah, those are great suggestions. So let me recap on what we've done. So we talked about nitrous oxide. You know, we got a plan there. These studies, we got a plan here, right? So we're moving along, and so far so good. Rahat, can we pull the methane? So the methane recommendation has been one that's been also probably a little bit more mature, because we probably had a draft of this one early this year. So this is probably the oldest in terms of development. But I wanted to take a look at that and ask whether this is something we want to continue to go with. Maybe those, I don't recall exactly who drafted this, but maybe those that did draft this can give us a recap.
I think it was largely Eric. I'm sorry, not Eric. I'm sorry, Russ.
Russ.
With input from the whole group.
Right.
And I thought we kind of settled on this one in
right. So this is like a
January,
shoe-in.
February. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So can we call this a shoe-in? Good. All right. So let's keep track. So
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Alicia.
No, I'm not against it. I just want to clarify for C, because I do remember we were talking particularly around manure and animal waste treatments, and one point anaerobic digestion specifically. There are already incentives on the agricultural side for these, obviously not the municipal industrial. So is there a need to clarify or distinguish between sectors when we're talking about these technologies?
So I'm tempted to say, let's the experts answer this.
Just following up Alicia's comment, as you all know, Stephanie Lansing presented to us some of her work, and she did some work for MDA, which Alicia, I'm sure, has more information about the report. And I just actually, she couldn't come. I presented Stephanie's work in one of our national meetings in Canada just a couple of weeks ago. So that item C in there, I mean, Stephanie basically for anaerobic digestion, any waste, the way that she has worked out, basically liquid is used as a fertilizer, the waste, the solid part into composting and so on. It's sort of a circular bioeconomy aspect. And then the methane gas is captured for energy purposes. So this animal waste or even waste from agriculture or even human waste that she actually is projecting to do, that those are really very much on the top of the science these days. In other words, that's happening, and which helps basically reduce methane and obviously also do circular bioeconomy from a resource reuse point of view and so on. But anyway, I just wanted to add what Alicia mentioned. So we have good information, that we have people, and Stephanie can provide lots of support for that if needed.
Was Stephanie's point that such efforts in agriculture should be expanded, that we need additional incentives? That's what I heard when she presented. Certainly municipal and industrial I don't think there are any incentives right now, and there are some for agriculture, but I thought her point was we needed more. It needs to be encouraged further. And that needs to be coordinated, of course, with the Department of Agriculture.
That's
Indeed,
my
I mean, there are
memory as
lots.
well.
Yes. Sorry, I was going to say yes, Russ. I remember Stephanie said that, and I agree. And that is, there are lots of things regarding scaling up and many other things that needs to be really worked out. Some basic things are done, but lots of other issues that needs to be resolved in terms of especially scaling up and so forth.
Eric?
Yeah, I was going to, excuse me, I was going to add that one really does have to address this, if not only sector by sector, but also even different animal systems. Of course, Maryland doesn't have very much in the way of dairy or cattle, but anaerobic digestion is pretty much limited across the country to operations that have at least 2,000 head. Smaller operations just aren't economical for anaerobic digestion. Now, pigs may be entirely different, and chickens, we're using the chicken litter fairly efficiently in other ways now. So this has to be looked at in the context of what is needed for Maryland and what is the scale of the technology that would be most appropriate. And I imagine the answer is very different from municipal wastes as well. But certainly, nationally, anaerobic digestion seems like a good idea, but it's really limited in dairy because it has to be only on big scales. And so we'd have to ask that question and I imagine Stephanie would know, have some ideas along those lines as to what's the scale that's appropriate for Maryland. But at the end of the day, I'm confident that there's more work that needs to be done on it in order to be able to apply that technology more broadly so that we can make better use of manure resource. It's nationally, only about 20% of livestock manure gets recycled back onto croplands. And of course, it varies regionally. I don't know what the number is for Maryland, but there's a lot of room for improvement.
So I've got just a couple comments on that. And yeah, I fully agree that expansion of these technologies in an on-farm scenario is important. So that is both financial assistance to the farm, but also the technical assistance that comes with navigating permits, local zoning, interagency or interutility agreements, right, to connect back to the grid. All of those are significant hurdles. I'll say it that way. So however you want to phrase the word incentives, right? To Eric's point, though, MDA is sponsoring a project that will be operational within the next 2 months for a modular anaerobic digestion system for 125 cow operation. And we have roles, thinkings of success and the ability, to your point, of for Maryland's dairy industry, what that medium and small operations, because we are so limited on those large 2,000 plus herds. So more to come on that, but we are really thinking about regionally what that means for us and could be brought to this conversation as well.
That's great.
Great. Okay, so any other comments related to methane? So if we, again, keeping tabs, we got nitrous oxide, we got joint study, now we got methane. That's 3 in my book. Are we comfortable with that?
So are we happy with CN here, or do we want to say we would like to see some research sponsored into the most effective methods? Is that what I heard Eric say? As well as provide incentives?
So I think the challenge is how, we are also limited in the number of words these recommendations are allowed to be. And, I like the broad definition of incentivize. You know, that could be staff support, that could be MOU, that could be legal support, that could be grid support, it could be financial support, it could be research support, without having to list all that. Because then it becomes somewhat untenable. And I think if we looked at the broadest definition of incentivize in this, we may have to explain that somewhere, you know, either personally by words or whatever. We're not defining what incentivize is, but it needs more juice, whatever it is. Is that fair to say, Alicia?
I know what it'll mean to MDA when we get the recommendation, so I'm just going to take that. I'm going to leave it to y'all on the wordsmithing for the commission.
Yeah, thank you.
But I know what we need within ag, right? So I'll use it broadly as you've suggested.
Great. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, so let's move on to the next. So Russ, can I ask you to I don't know the words percent, but you know, make the introduction of the recommendation that you've been developing with colleagues and over the past few days.
Right. This is part of the health impacts in general of controlling greenhouse gases. The Climate Change Commission as a whole saw a nice presentation from the comptroller, who pointed out that climate change is going to incur substantial costs to Maryland. And several of the other commissioners pointed out that this is true, but the benefits will not be enjoyed by Marylanders if only Maryland enacts these greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So in that sense, if you want to know the real economic benefit to citizens of the state of Maryland, then we should be looking at measurements and models of the short-lived species, specifically ultrafine particles and black carbon, that will be reduced locally substantially. And if, for example, we electrify the fleet of vehicles in Maryland, that will have immediate and very local major benefits for the health of citizens of Maryland. And that can be studied and quantified. BenMap is a relatively coarse tool, and Amir has some other tools that might work even better. But the basic idea is that if we look at the local benefits from, if Maryland electrifies its fleet to, you know, some reasonable percentage, we will see substantial local benefits, and we don't have to rely on the rest of the world. So I think that is something we're studying.
Okay. Any compliments? I think the benefit of this one is that it's already in the format that needs to be submitted. So maybe we can, I mean, it could be tweaked, but this is almost like submission ready. Yes, Scott.
Yeah, I fully support that. That sounds excellent. I think it's extremely important to focus on, when possible, on things that are going to move the needle locally and also globally. So 2 thumbs up.
Your kids like it too.
You caught that, huh? He's a real advocate.
Kids are more excited. Even Scott is. So
It's riding a bike around the house right now. It's, you know, zero carbon, right? So
And they should be excited because we're going to protect their health.
there you go. Okay, so right. So if we're keeping tally, so this could be like our 4th, right? So which is our limit. So we had I know
Fernando, quickly, I just maybe it's just a product of the template that MDE provided, where we name the state agency that's responsible for maybe implementation of the recommendation. But it makes sense to me, And I think the template would allow the lead agency to be MDE and academic and partners. So I know that UMD is doing a lot of work to quantify some of the outcomes of the modeling to assess the local impacts. So rather than just put MDE on the hook, and now there's ulterior motives here, I think that we could expand that out to end partners minimally. I know Jared is on the call who created this template, but I think there's a lot of flexibility here, and it's really MDE and UMD, or MDE and its partners.
And I would say all University of Maryland schools, because we have expertise at other schools other than UMD.
Yes, yes, and that's the piece that we need to, walk, carefully, thoughtfully, reasonably. Yep, absolutely. Let's see. I see a couple of hands up. Scott, your hands up. Is that old hand or new hand? Okay, so it's old hand. Good. And Jennifer had her hand up, and she did pose a comment that I think I wanted to. Jennifer, is still on, or?
I am. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So I really like these specific scientific suggestions, but I'm wondering if we need a larger suggestion that reacts to the moment of all the regulations at the federal level that are being stripped, which mean that people and places and animals and everything in Maryland are left unprotected. Whether this committee, whether it's appropriate for this task force to have a suggestion that we evaluate what's been undone at the federal level and put in protections at the state level where they are needed.
No, thanks for that. So let me ask this question, given that Jennifer, Russ, myself are members of the commission, and we also have Jared here.
And Robin.
And
Robin, right? Could what Jennifer is suggesting, which I think is great, and you may also recall that Nate Hultman gave a presentation back in April about the voids and regulation and what those meant to Maryland, and it was more federal, but there was something there. So I think the commission would be inclined to consider this. Is this something that us as commissioners, one of us or us combined, could submit separately from the SDWG?
I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and
because it
Okay,
expands.
but I can't, because each of us can only put forward one, and
Right.
I've already put forward a different one, so it would need to be
Right, but
somebody
Robin-
other than me.
Yeah, but Robin, Russ, and I are here, and I would jump at doing something like that. But let me ask Jared if our timing still works for doing this.
It's perfectly allowable for Robin to introduce a recommendation as an individual commissioner. She can bring that to the floor at the commission meeting. That's perfectly fine.
And I would, I would second it and third it and fourth it, and so is that Jennifer? Would this satisfy your purpose?
Well, my concern is that if I'm not mistaken, according to the process, the commission will lean more favorably to ones that were passed by a task force first, as opposed to just coming separately from a commissioner. So given that this group can do 4, I don't know if there's space within 4 for this to be one of the 4. If not, then I think having Robin do it is a wonderful suggestion.
And are there any other work groups that have room within their 4?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we would know that yet, Robin.
Yeah, I don't
Right,
either.
right.
Yeah.
But Jennifer's on a couple of the other
Yeah.
work groups, so I don't know.
I don't know of any others that are germane to this particular section. It is sort of scientific.
Okay.
Let me make sure I understand what the charge would be. So there are any number of changes being implemented at the federal level. And what we want to give to the governor and the legislature, I guess, is some sort of analysis of how that will directly impact the environment and ability to control emissions in the state of Maryland? That's a fairly tall order. It's doable, and it sounds important. I mean, we are going to get dinged when, federal funds are being slashed for
Right.
research.
So I guess I didn't really imagine that we would look at things like they've defunded things. I would look at things like the EPA has taken away, regulations on certain pollutants, et cetera, that we don't want to have in our state. And therefore our state may want to put a regulation on said pollutants that, things like regulations that the EPA stripped away would be things that the state might want to put into place.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to go in and look at exactly which regulations have been stripped. That's if anybody knows, it's probably a moving target.
Well, I think they rolled back the endangerment finding, which
For
is,
CO2.
That's proposed.
yeah.
It's a plan to roll it back. I'm sure it will be challenged in the courts. And right now there's a comment period on the report the DOE issued, where they got a few climate deniers to issue a pseudoscience report on why greenhouse gases do not endanger humans. After that comment period, the EPA will issue its finding, and then it will be challenged in court. But it's basically saying that EPA will no longer have authority to regulate CO2, methane, or N2O, or any other greenhouse gas. To the extent that states want to step in to try to regulate any of those, I suppose that's a possibility. But then there are others that are non climate related, like mercury, for example, lead. But I don't think that's our purview, right?
Chris just dropped on the chat a study that looks, or a summary of a study that looks interesting, or analysis. Chris, can you say a few words about this one and how it relates to what we're talking about?
Sorry, I was muted. I dropped a link to a presentation that was given to the mitigation working group that tried to answer the question, in light of the federal rollbacks, what does this mean for the state, and what can we do? So that presentation was offered to the mitigation working group, and obviously the mitigation working group is considering that conversation and their recommendations, but I just merely placed that in there for your reference, to review what MDE's summary is on what the federal rollbacks might mean for its policies and all the policies in the state plan.
Thank you. Eric, your hand's up. It's again old hand or new hand? No,
it's old hand, but actually,
okay.
That Chris's PowerPoint, one of those slides does bring back that it's not just the endangerment finding that's important. It's such things as cutting off support for EVs, for EV chargers, cutting off support for residential solar, and so on. So Russ was talking about human health. Well, one of the best ways to improve air quality to help with human health would be to get more EVs. And so that's going to be slowing things down. And so that's going to impact Maryland in particular. So those are the kinds of things beyond the endangerment finding that we might look at in terms of their impact in Maryland. Because those are definitely happening. The endangerment finding is probably going to be locked up in the court for a while. But we know that funding for EVs and charging stations is on its way out.
Yeah, and that will have direct and immediate impacts on Maryland's ability to reduce local emissions by converting diesel to electric.
Let me sound you on this possibility. So given that this group has identified maybe 4 areas of recommendations that are a priority, you know, if we submit them as recommendations, is because we're saying these are priorities from a science and technology point of view. But we could also, in each of these recommendations, embed and emphasize the void of the void that could occur in each of these areas due to the lapse in federal legislation, federal support, so that this gets embedded in each one of the recommendations. That could be one way to approach it. Does that sound like a crazy far-fetched? Is that feasible? Thoughts?
That's not a bad idea, Fernando. I mean, this is a cross-cutting, pervasive problem.
Yeah, it is right. That's why I'm suggesting it. It's, you know, this is going to happen in the health. This is going to happen in the nitrous oxide. It's going to happen in methane, right? And so this will be an additional component to each of the recommendations is to identify that gap.
So my question, this is Jennifer, is that that would then limit it to the 4 areas. I'm wondering if any of the 4 areas could be combined with each other so that we could add this larger, which is about all of the different things, as opposed to just 4 subsets.
Yep, that's the trade-off. Yep. Of course, we could do the other thing, the other daring thing, right? And we are daring people, is to submit 5 recommendations.
I don't think we want to be the group that does that. Let's leave that to one of those other groups that sometimes does 20 or 25 recommendations.
Yeah, but we've been under for a while.
I know. I mean, we've gotten these clear directions early on because they have struggled as you know.
I know.
They, yeah. Well, we still, individual commissioners can make recommendations, and Jennifer, excuse me, Jennifer said she already made one, but there are several of us who have not.
So we could go to that idea and submit it even.
I mean, even a couple of us, if
exactly.
I think this is way too broad to just come from one work group.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd be happy to champion this at the commission level.
And
if several of us team up, it'll give it more power.
Yeah, I like this idea.
Yeah, you can say each, you know, there are several of us who are commissioners who are entitled, and we've combined our options, our voice, into just saying, hey, we really should take a look at how changes at the federal level are going to permeate through Maryland's wise plans.
I think that makes the most sense. I mean, I mean, this is really a cross-cutting issue, right? So you could collectively say like that, this should be tagged on at each of those, at the end of this, each recommendation. It's sort of like what if scenario. Had it not happened, this is where we would be. And because of all this rollback, this is where we are going to be, right? So that could be like the end tagline on all sort of work.
Chris's 2 slide decks are just, you know, they just lay out what it would look like if, you know, those federal government or federal administration policies do go into effect or already have gone into effect.
Yeah, so let me suggest this. So Robin, Russ, myself will work with Jennifer to craft this and present this at the commission level. Does that make sense as a path forward?
I think that sounds great. And I actually just want to ask Chris, because I thought those PowerPoints were so terrific. I'm wondering if that text or those facts will be put
Yes.
into the body of the report, because it's just so important for our state to look at those rollbacks.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I'll do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we haven't started to put pen to paper, Jennifer, but we certainly would appreciate any commissioner's input and involvement in the creation of that report. Ideally, MDE staff would just assemble all the good work of the working groups and the commission into a document. So any input is welcome on what that report should include or say.
Yes, and I'll suggest one more thing. An additional part of the task of this group is the drafting of the state of the science piece of the report, and we can include in that section. We can include this gap and this this what's the word I'm looking for? This situation that we find ourselves in, science and technology, with what's transpired this year. So we can include that in there. So it'll provide some heft to that idea in the report itself. So that can be something also very useful. Okay, folks, so we got our 4. Oh, Jared.
Yeah, so totally support the individual commissioner submission. Just want to note that you can still use the Google form so that people can have an advanced view of that, as opposed to just bringing it to the floor at the meeting itself.
Yes. And what I was suggesting is that Robin, Russ, myself, and Jennifer do that part, right? So yeah, so we will do that. So in terms of going back to, so we got our 4, right? So we got nitrous oxide, methane, the joint study, and why am I missing my 4th? Oh, and the health study, right? Sorry. So let's talk timetable. Today's Friday, 15th. All right. So I'll work individually with the folks that have been proposing all these things so that we have a pretty decent draft of each of the recommendations by next Friday, 22nd, right? Next Friday, 22nd, it goes to everybody, to all this group for comments, so that by the following Friday, 29th, we have the cut version that goes into the commission on the 2nd of September, and we might do some final tweaks over the Labor Day weekend. Does that sound like a reasonable production plan? Are you on board? Are you happy, excited? Yes, we can do this.
Sounds like a great plan.
All right, I look forward to this. This, I tell you, at 1 p.m., this sounded like a very daunting task. I was very nervous. And now I'm no longer nervous. Thank you all. And Jared is smiling.
We
So
can
folks,
get nervous about something else.
so that's what we're gonna do. You're gonna start receiving a bunch of emails from Rahat and me, etc., and Dave, and we'll coordinate this thing. So next Friday, first draft, following Friday, final draft, get submitted by Tuesday. And that includes, by the way, Russ, Robin, me, Jennifer, for the big one. So it's gonna be a lot of work. Don't go away, or if you're gonna go away, don't be completely disconnected, that sort of thing.
Can you repeat that timeline again?
Yes. So Friday, August 20th. We'll send a summary email. Oh, it's Rahat. Sorry. You're gonna be sending the summary email. So Friday, August 22nd, we're gonna send a first draft of all the 4 recommendations for the STWG and the commission recommendation. That's 5 total. It is 5 total. It's just that they're in different pockets. And then by Friday the 29th, the following Friday, so 2 weeks from now, so people get comments and we'll package them, and Friday 29th produce final version. It'll go out again to everybody on Friday 29th. If you want to do some final tweaks, we can do those over Labor Day weekend. Tuesday gets submitted, and then we're home. Exciting timetable, so this is good. Yes, Jared.
A reminder that you do have until the 4th to submit. As I noted in the message earlier, the 1st was the original date. That's Labor Day. We've extended that date to September 4th. So you have until midnight that day.
But Jared, I got to tell you something. I was hoping you did not say this, because now people are going to relax.
Double relax.
Now they're thinking, we got this all this time.
Oh my God.
I haven't lined up like working. It's okay. Yeah. So it still works because we can still do the tweaks, over the weekend, so I think timetable still sticks. Listen, thanks a lot. This is great. Officially, we have a period of public comment, so I want to open that up in case there is public comment or there are public comments. But if not, I'll give you some time back on your Friday afternoon. We're going to follow up with emails and stuff, and I want to thank you. This is a important task, tough. I think we did great. All right, enjoy the rest of your Friday and weekend.
All right.
And Rahat, we'll get in touch about,
Rahat, Fernando, Rahat, could we just stay on?
Yeah, stay on. Let's stay on to coordinates logistics.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thanks all.
Fernando and all. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Have a good weekend. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we ended up. You get your pay doubled for doing that, Fernando. So.
Yes. Yes.
Jared, I don't think, or Russ, you have to stay on, or Chris. I think we got it.
Just you might want to end the recording before you take
Oh,
care.
thank you. Thanks for the
okay.
reminder.
Okay,
Let's clean up
so-
on your end. Appreciate it.